Guys, I don't want to overreact or anything, but is Amad Diallo the best player in the world?
I'm being serious.
All the doubters need to rethink their position because this right here, this is what I call the Anthony effect. Somebody spare a thought for Pep Guardiola and the men in blue. 1 win in 11 games is just not something that I had on my Manchester City predictions card whatsoever. Nevertheless, they continue to sink deeper and deeper into the abyss. Maybe this isn't just a phase after all. But don't let that distract you from the other massive story here. As everyone decided to fumble, the real winners of the weekend emerged at the very end of it. Just a bunch of chill guys that apparently are only trying to avoid relegation. Hello, hope you're doing well. This? It's just something I threw on. Plus, today's a special occasion. A new Why Always Me variant just dropped. It's been a good Monday morning, guys. The real reason why I'm dressed like this is because I just came back from a friend's wedding over the weekend and it was really good. I'm still feeling festive. Plus, technically, Mr. Taxman, this suit, it's now a tax write-off. I feel like I'm running out of words to describe Manchester City these days. I feel like just before every single one of their games, I'm thinking, this is the one where things turn around. When they hammered Forest 3-0, I thought, this is it. You know, here it comes. De Bruyne is back. And then they faced Crystal Palace and were just not very good at all. They then traveled to Turin. Vlahovic bulldozed his way through. And somehow, even the United States of America are stamping their authority over them. Timothy Weah over to Weston McKennie. And City, battered, bruised, yet again, had to go back to the drawing board. All of the reasons for why we've been saying City have been having this terrible form, they're all warranted. Injuries, fatigue, all that, yada yada. But at this point, I think all of us can see that there is something else going on. Something psychological. Both in attack and defense, this team is cooked. Maybe it's time to recall Calvin Phillips. Maybe Pep probably doesn't even realize that he's actually on loan. He's still part of the club, big man. But then again, that presumes that Pep realizes that he still exists. Thankfully though, Mateus Nunes is always good for a 10 out of 10 performance. So there's that. This is just insane, man. And Guardiola seems like he's losing more and more sanity as the days go by. He just seems so defeated. I do really fear for him. Hearing him say things like he's not good enough instead of the usual sarcasm is a sign of the times. To make matters worse, it seemed that after this game, only Diaz, Gvardiol, Haaland, Foden, and Stones were the ones doing the rounds, thanking and apologizing to the fans. Need I remind you that City were playing this match at home. Their captain, Kyle Walker, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan, and more of them were nowhere to be seen. Losing is really hard on everyone, but this is just, it's not a very good look. Off the field, the hearing regarding City's charges concluded on the 9th of December. Although it seems like the verdicts will only be made public next year around February or so, some people have already made up their minds. Not that that means anything in the grand scheme of things, especially from an official perspective. On the other hand, across town, regardless of results, things haven't exactly been hunky-dory either. Manchester United's start under Ruben Amorim hasn't exactly been consistent. It's been the definition of mixed, I would say. 5 games in the Premier League so far. 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. In the Europa League, 2 games. Both wins. But both of those games required comebacks to seal the wins, and those are against teams that you would think United should be walking past pretty easily. We still remain in 13th place in the Premier League. However, regardless of all of that, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. The team's actually able to retain the ball effectively, use effective counter movements, actually find each other in space. Rasmus Højlund, you know what, they actually acknowledge his existence and are looking to pass the ball to him. First time for everything, right? It's a start. And Erik ten Hag's war crimes are finally being brought to light. The most in-form player on the entire team has finally been given a good run of games, and he's making us all question what was really going on with ten Hag's team selection. Amad Diallo. What a player. We'll talk more about him later on, obviously, as we go into the actual match, but man, this guy's movements are just so electric. The way he moves between the fullbacks and the centre-backs on both sides of the pitch is just mesmeric. And all it took for him to get some consistent game time was for the current manager to see through the unearned, undroppable status of 2 of United's superstars. Alejandro Garnacho and Marcus Rashford. To his credit, Garnacho saved Ten Hag from getting sacked a couple of times and was a solid fan favorite for a long while. He was the best player on the pitch a few times that I can remember very fondly, so I understand the bias. I don't condone it because he was inconsistent, but I do understand it. Marcus Rashford seems like he's just been on autopilot since he signed his big contract. Off the pitch, obviously, he seems like a great guy, and you guys know I tried not to talk too much about players' activities off the pitch because I don't think it matters too much, especially for the context of this channel, but he's just been so inconsistent. Like, this is a guy who was a senior player in the squad. He's 27 now, right? He should be heavily in the conversation for club captain. But in the last year, he's been pictured at nightclubs and then declared ill the very next day. He'll put in a shift once every blue moon, but even when he does that, it's not for a full 90 minutes. Just before the game, Amorim said this: "I pay attention to everything. The way you eat, the way you put your clothes on to go to a game, everything. I make my evaluation and then I decide." This was in response to Amorim being asked why neither Garnacho nor Rashford were included in the matchday squad, not even on the bench. So if that's not sending a message, I don't really know what is. Seems like we really do have a no-nonsense manager on our hands. Now, I was in a good mood going into this match. Like I said, I was at a wedding. It was on Saturday. The match was on Sunday. Watching someone that you've known for ages commit themselves for life to a life partner, it's beautiful, you know? Watching a team that's tormented you for ages collapse, it's pretty good too. And that brings us to the main event, the actual match. I have some notes. It took a whopping 14 minutes for Mason Mount to have to come off injured. So much has been made of him contributing to Amorim's tactical setup, a master of counter-pressing and a demon when it comes to the half spaces, thanks to his time in a similar role under Tuchel. I thought he looked sharp in the time that he was on. Obviously, he wasn't on for long enough to make a conclusive decision on what you think about him. But you know what? He's signed until 2028, so hopefully there is time for him to make a real splash. From early, City just couldn't consistently string passes together. I couldn't quite comprehend what I was seeing. United were pressing well, De Bruyne was looking very unpolished. It was quite scrappy at times. I couldn't find the actual screenshot of this moment and I wish that I could, but there was a moment early on in the half where there were like 6 or 7 players in the center circle, all just trying to get a bite of the cake and kick the ball, and it was just like they were all at break time at primary school. But some patterns of play did begin to emerge. When United were on the ball, the whole City team was back in defense. They squeezed United up the pitch very well early on, but also seemed really happy to blindly kick it up the field at times. And I don't think that last part can be understated enough. Before this season, I feel like I could only count on one hand the amount of times I can remember Man City hoofing the ball outside the defensive area to nobody in particular just to release pressure. This season though, I feel like I'm going to need both hands and more to count the amount of times I can remember them doing it, especially in this bad stretch of games. In this game, just from the ones I remember, here's Guardiola doing it in the 59th minute. United then came again. Here's Erling Haaland doing it in the 63rd minute. And look at where his standing position was when he does it. Erling Haaland is astonishingly part of the defensive line here. Now, I don't want to mislead you here. Right before this snip was taken, United had an attacking corner, about a minute before the snip was taken. But the point is that was a whole minute before that, and United were applying so much pressure that City had to have their centre forward join their defensive line just in normal play to get the ball out. There was only one thing on his mind throughout: anywhere will do. That particular clearance led to the ball being recycled and Højlund having a penalty shout. But that only came in the second half. We'll get to that in a bit. In the first half, however, City took the lead in the 36th minute, and it's hard to say that it wasn't deserved. They were in the ascendancy at that point in time. The cross comes in, deflected off a United player. I guess it threw Højlund off and Guardiola headed it home. You could say that it was a tad fortunate, but Guardiola reacted fastest. There's no fortune in that. Onana for some reason just cannot distribute with his right foot. He can't go long at all. It's gotten him into trouble a couple times already this season, and I can definitely see teams continue to exploit that. I counted at least 3 times that he overshot the ball to Mazraoui on the right, and it just went over and possession was just given up. Luckily though, nothing detrimental happened in this game. Now, Amorim clearly emphasized that United needed to exhibit more controlled possession in the second half and make City work. And it's exactly what they did. It's funny because there were times when it seemed like I was watching Man City playing a bottom half table team. And City were the bottom half table team. Amad Diallo, of all people, had a headed chance at goal that caused Edison to make a great save. This was somewhere in the early second half of the game. But in the lead up to that chance, and I counted, United made about 37 passes uninterrupted all the way throughout City for about 2.5 minutes. For some reason, City were chasing shadows against United? And this wasn't an isolated incident, it happened a couple of times. But in the biggest story of the day, Kyle Walker almost got murdered. Rasmus Højlund almost took his head clean off with this one.
He could have been killed.
As a team captain, how can you be doing that? It doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes I kind of wonder, don't players realize when they do stuff like this, that considering everyone in the stadium, all the fans, all the broadcasting cameras, there are hundreds of cameras pointed straight at them at all times throughout the game. And they still do that. And so blatantly. For a guy like Walker, while you're in the worst form of your life, honestly, it requires a pretty impressive lack of self-awareness. But hey man, maybe he was onto something. It's not like anyone was manning the VAR station anyway. Case in point, Ruben Dias's challenge on Rasmus Højlund. He swipes across Højlund in an attempt to get the ball and clearly makes contact with Højlund while not touching the ball at all. If that's not grounds for a penalty, I have no idea what is. At this point, what even is VAR? I remember this check taking like 10 seconds to complete. Don't really understand how this works at all. Makes you question the legitimacy of the officials. Despite everything, City should have won this match. If they just stuck to the basics, kept concentration, then what eventually happened would not have happened. But I guess they just realized that there was an injustice that was done earlier with the Højlund challenge and decided to give United another bite at the cherry. Matheus Nunes, with 10 seconds of absolute insanity, gave United the ultimate Christmas present. He makes the most dangerous and unserious back pass, which the golden boy Amad latches onto. Edison comes to meet him, can't really fault him for that, he's been given a hospital pass, but even still, this is a containable situation. All City had to do was cut his angles on goal and his teammates, of which he had none as options at this particular point. Slow him down, get men behind. In the end, none of that really mattered, I guess, because Nunes decided that, he was the root of the problem, he was gonna be the solution, someone's solution. One of the worst attempts to get the ball a player could make. Why did he do this? Amad had a quick look, he braced for impact, penalty. And the craziest thing about this is that despite all the revisionism that you might be seeing, Nunes, he wasn't exactly having a bad game. Obviously he wasn't a star performer or anything like that, but he wasn't making terrible passes. He was doing okay. Plus, he was playing in an unfamiliar position because Rico Lewis was injured at left back. Fernandes does what he does best and scores the pen. Legendary celebration at the home fans. About 115 seconds later, and no, that was not a joke, that's actually what happened. Lisandro Martinez plays a very routine ball that has no business amounting to anything. All the same, Ballon d'Or candidate Amad Diallo makes a lovely cutting run, checks for offsides, and Edison is nowhere to be found by the goal line. Diaz is jogging back. Vardio is jogging back. Nunes is jogging back. It doesn't look like Edison or anyone in the back line is communicating with each other at all. This goal was a great sight to see as a Man United fan, but of all the goals that I've seen City concede in this terrible run of form they've been having, this one is probably the one that I think was the most avoidable. I just don't really understand this level of head loss from these guys. These are the reigning champions. They're cooked. Vardio scored the goal, he was okay, but I just can't really give anyone in that defensive line a pass because all of them could have prevented that final goal, like I just said. Diaz, if he just wasn't jogging and decided to actually do something about it. Edison, if he spoke to his players. Vardio could have put it off the line, and Nunes could have done the same thing. Oh, and by the way, Phil Foden played 90 minutes of football, guys. What's happened to him? It's a really good moment for Manchester United. Since Manchester City have gone on this incredible losing streak, Ruben Amorim has beaten them twice with two different teams. I guarantee you that will somehow be a pub quiz question in the future. This is the first time that Man United have beaten a Big Six team since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer left the club. He left the club over 3 years ago. You heard that right, yeah. Like I said, I really like the progression of this team right now. I don't think that anyone in particular had a particularly bad game. Dalot gave the ball away a couple of times, but I think he gets a pass. You know, Mazraoui is and continues to be the best signing of the season by a mile. De Ligt was solid. Amad Diallo, of course, man of the match. Words on the streets as Lionel Messi models his game after him. It's what the streets are saying, guys, not me. One of the most surprising things about this whole situation is that Manchester City have been on such a downward spiral for so long, yet are still only 3 points away from Arsenal. It shows how good their start to the season was and how fast everything's been collapsing. However, you can't really write them off. It is Manchester City after all. But while they try and find themselves and get back on their feet, other teams are building momentum more and more. One other team in particular. Chelsea pulled even closer to the top of the table by beating Brentford 2-1, continuing a run of form that sees them close the gap more and more. 5'7" Marc Cucurella outjumped 6'1" Mads Ruslev to open the scoring just before halftime, and Nicholas Jackson doubled the lead late on. Honestly, he should have scored a goal earlier on, and it adds on to what I've said before in that the guy is wasteful, but it doesn't matter if he's wasteful because he's still scoring and he's still doing really well. His ceiling is so high, and I think once he starts finishing those easy chances, it's going to be a tough time for everyone. Brentford did manage to pull one back at the end. Maresca and all of Chelsea came out with their usual spiel of them not being in the title race. Nicholas Jackson said that he doesn't even know what a title race is. Okay, man. But I do take exception to one thing that Maresca said in particular. No matter how many games we win, I think we are not ready to compete for the title. One of the reasons why is that I think those other teams know how to compete to win titles. They won't concede the goals we concede like the one today. Listen, I understand what he's trying to say. You're not trying to build the hype, you're going to give the generic answer. But my thing is, his words, they directly betray reality and what's really going on around here. What other team is he talking about that doesn't concede silly goals and knows how to compete? Is it Liverpool, who just drew 2-2, had a needless sending off in the 17th minute, and only just managed to recover a point from the situation through a late goal? The same team that regularly goes down in matches and is increasingly now reliant on needing to grow into games. And listen, you guys know just as well as I do that sometimes you need more than 90 minutes to grow into a game, and if you do, you usually lose. Or maybe he means Arsenal, who have been a title contending team for over 2 years now but have become less and less potent as the year has gone by. Here's a quick recap of some of their advanced statistics over this period, thanks to Opta and BBC. The drop-off in everything from goals to expected goals to conversion rates and everything in between is very telling. 37 and 36 points. Those are the 2 points tallies that Arsenal have had after 16 games of a Premier League season in the last 2 seasons. On screen is the current season's table. Both of these tallies puts them in pole position this year. They simply cannot play like they used to. There are a lot of reasons for this. The Ødegaard injury was a very big one, but there are more. And the only thing that's really keeping them in is their admittedly overpowered ability to just force corners in. 23 goals now scored from corners. I think that's the most in all of Europe, or at least top flight European leagues right now. Didn't seem to bother Everton though. They took 8 corners, score 0-0. Or maybe Maresca was referring to Manchester City. 6-time Premier League winners in the last 7 years, as Pep Guardiola likes to remind us, and he's right. They are that. And Guardiola very well might be the best manager of his generation. Well, he is the best manager of his generation for sure, but he's up there for being the best manager of all time. He's in the conversation, right? But as all of us can see, he and his team, they're wounded right now. And as the game against United showed, that even in situations where maybe they look like they are in control, they in fact are not in control. 11 games, 1 win. 11 games, 1 win. Maybe the real threat is Nottingham Forest. The current top 4 consists of 3 Champions League winners, and Forest is one of them. They've pulled some incredible wins out of their hat, and they have no European football to worry about either, so who knows? Anything can happen. Touch wood. But probably ask him first, though. I think it will be a little bit uncomfortable. So the question goes back to Enzo Maresca. Which other teams are you talking about that all supposedly know how to compete and don't concede silly goals? From where I'm standing, this is one of the most exciting and unpredictable seasons in the Premier League in ages. All the rules seem to have been thrown out the window, and right now the best we can do is just take it game by game. And there we have it. If you guys like what you saw, feel free to become a channel member. I figure it's one of the the least invasive ways that you can contribute to the channel if you want to. I just always get emails from people saying they want to do so, and yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. If you don't want to, no stress, nothing's gonna change. I'll see you later in the week. We're gonna be talking about Bayern Munich, so exciting. That's all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.